everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us for the special NIAW Fertility 101 Body and Mind webinar. We have really great information to share for you. We have exciting prize giveaways at the end. And before we get started with the presentation, I have a few housekeeping items to go over for this webinar. First of all, a recording will be available on demand after the webinar, so you'll be able to view it whenever you want. You can receive that via email post-webinar, and we'd love to hear from you during the webinar. There is a Q&A, ask a question box on your screen. Feel free to submit any questions that you have throughout the webinar. And if you do have any questions about your specific circumstances, we ask that you schedule a consultation with a doctor. So we want to keep all questions open-ended so that we can provide great information to everybody. And we also encourage you to follow us on social media, on our Instagram and our Twitter page, or on LinkedIn. We're always providing really great insights and information from our doctors on those channels. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Hirshfeld-Cytron.
Well, hi. Thank you, everybody, for including us in your evening. I'm just going to pull up the slides and get started. I think everybody can see. Holly, can you see?
Yep, we can see.
Wonderful. Well, again, welcome. This is National Infertility Awareness Week. So we so appreciate you coming and listening to any of these webinars, especially this week where we're so focused on awareness and advocacy for our patients. Orange is the National Infertility Awareness Week color, so we are wearing our orange. So thank you again for being here. My name is Jenny Hirshfeld-Cytron. Please feel free to follow, DM me on Instagram. It's at dr.jennyhirschfeld. And without that, we're going to get started. So it's Fertility 101, Body and Mind. This is me. Following me, Janet very generously will also be speaking to us about the financial piece. So we're really excited to have her as well.
Thank you.
So we are going to start a little bit about FCI, then talk about Body and Mind, talk about Fertility 101. Then we'll have an opportunity for Janet as well, get some questions and answers. And then at the end, there's prize giveaways. So please stay to the end. So a little bit about FCI. So FCI, Fertility Centers of Illinois. We have more than 100 years of physician experience. We have had greater than 42,000 babies born as a result of our efforts. We have 8 locations throughout the Chicagoland area, and we're comprised of 11 physicians. So there's a map there where you can see the various places in which you can see us. FCIonline.com. If you have more interest in exact locations in those suburbs and city, please look. This is us. So this is the group of physicians that I'm really lucky to call my partners. I'm there in the third. This is me. So we're really lucky to have such a wide range of expertise and interests amongst our practice. I'm going to, right below me, it's like one of the game shows. It feels like Wheel of Fortune or something like that. But below me is Sam Olander. He's our reproductive urologist. So it's really awesome. He's newer to our group. So we're just so super excited that he's with us. So the reality is infertility is common. And so 1 in 6, and it's interesting, like this statistic is kind of now changing. We always thought 1 in 8, and then they've updated some of the ways in when they assess infertility. It's really 1 in 6. So there's nothing uncommon about infertility. So 1 in 6 couples of reproductive age will experience infertility and need help in order to conceive, which means that each and every one of us know someone, if not ourselves. There's an equal number of male and female patients that have infertility. And this is those heterosexual couples. We know same-sex or single male or single female patients also seek us for our fertility services. So there really is a wide umbrella amongst those who get treatment. So infertility and stress, because I get asked this a lot. So is my infertility because I'm really stressed at work, or I have a lot going on in my life and in my family? And I think what's really important is to appreciate that stress does not cause infertility, but the reverse is not true. Infertility absolutely causes stress. So we think about some of these statistics. Infertile women, about 62% of them perceive as depressed or anxious. That is not a low number. It's 2/3. 83 believe the disorder had a negative impact on their fertility. It is impacting the way people function, the way you interact in your relationships. All of that is so real. And so again, if stress is not causing infertility, but the reverse, infertility is creating stress, it's impacting people's lives. And stress does not go away. There's no way to avoid stress in our world, but finding tools to help manage it, I think, help the process of infertility be that much easier. So, hey, trying to conceive can be stressful. We all know social media that we're suggesting to come follow us on can also be really challenging. Every time you go online, it seems like this other person is having a baby shower, this other individual is expanding their family, and this perception that it's very easy for those when we're just sort of looking and surveying people that we peripherally know. And so I think it can be really overwhelming. And then even when you're trying something that initially began as really connecting with a partner can feel like a job. And so we get that. We talked a little bit that infertility, stress does not cause infertility, but there is some thought that when we think of IVF outcomes, it can impact them. It can create fertilization that's slower or takes a longer time or impact a bit the sperm sample. So I always want to be very mindful how we discuss this because telling someone to not be stressed does not create less stress. Consciously creating tools to manage our stress is the way to do this. So yes, because some of the impacts on fertility outcomes, more because sometimes the stress can be so significant that patients drop out of treatment. We don't want that to happen. You know, if you stay in, we can help you. So managing and controlling our stress is going to be key. So how do we do this? We find a support system, friends, family, partner, therapists, online message boards, support groups. There are so many ways to do this. I have a lot of patients who want this to feel private. They've decided not to share with someone. That doesn't mean you can't be a part of a system. I think that is actually one of the wonderful things about social media is it is very anonymous. And you can be a part of a group, and resolve.org is amazing. And there are a couple others so that you definitely appreciate one, you're not alone. We just talked about 1 in 6 and how others are managing this. So even within our FCI community, again, because it is not rare, we have 2 mental health specialists who work with us who are incredibly gifted. Both Susan Rosada and Tiffany Edwards are able to do one-on-one or for a couple consultation. So a Zoom session, it's very, very easy to schedule these. You don't have to be our patient. There also are ways that there are support groups. They are currently mostly online, which maybe doesn't have that same effect of connecting people, but I think it makes it easier to join because, again, we're just on our computers. There's something easier about clicking, of course, and entering a room. And so we have infertility support group. We have a no partner needed support group. We have a pregnancy loss support group. I have had a lot of people find these quite helpful. And again, for those out there who are listening who maybe aren't our patients, these support groups are available for everybody. So how do we think about optimizing our mind-body connection? So how do we think about I'm feeling stressed about XYZ and telling myself not to be stressed is like a feed forward. I'm just getting more stressed. So what is it for you? I think that is what, when I meet with a patient, I will ask, what do you use currently? Because we want to make sure those tools are really sharpened. Like we want to think about your fertility plan and your mental health plan. And so many people, it's like, buffet. I take a little bit of this, I take a little bit of that. This is my brownie recipe. Diet and exercise is key for many people about how we feel good. Some fertility treatment can minimize some of the intensity of activity, so we have to pivot how we do exercise. Things that are always really wonderful is like strength training. It doesn't just have to be intense cardio to get that kind of lift. What we put into our bodies is so much more important than any supplement you can ever take in terms of food. There's expressions like food is medicine. It absolutely is. When you eat something, there's the blood flow to your gut that will never be reproduced by a supplement. So there's so much online about these like 30 supplements you take. We're so much better off to have a really healthy diet. So what does that mean? That means a diet that's predominantly fruits and vegetables and lean meats. Whole fat dairy can be a wonderful source of protein. Carbohydrates, yes, but minimizing the simple sugars and white flours. We want a diet full of antioxidants. So a lot of those supplements you read online are antioxidants. How do we do that? You eat really colorful fruits and vegetables. We eat the color of the rainbow. We try to really take quality foods in. So trying when possible to have organic based. So much better to use our resources there than to take supplements that you kind of read about online. Sleep is key. I think we underestimate how key sleep is. At least 7, but more and more there are many adults who probably need 8. And I think all of us know what it feels like when you feel good when you've had enough sleep. It just helps the rest of the world be a bit easier and the rest of your day to be a bit easier. So sleep is key. Positive affirmations, minimizing toxins. So what does that mean? So someone once said to me, life should be in moderation, including moderation. So I'm by no means suggesting that you eliminate all of these items, but that we do them, in a mindful way. So alcohol, until pregnant or depending on your treatment, so please speak to your individual physician. Alcohol doesn't have to be completely avoided, but it should be in a minimal to moderate intake. Caffeine should be minimal to moderate intake. The things I would argue you should completely avoid really would be tobacco and cannabis. Other toxins we think about are like plastics in our environment. So how do we eat and drink out of metal or glass or ceramic? Please do not heat your food in plastic. All that leaches in. Acupuncture can be a really wonderful way to help you feel a bit more connected and grounded. Meditation is something that's incredibly daunting for anyone who has tried. I will tell you personally, I find it that way. And so finding an app can just be a way to, I think, introduce yourself to it. Headspace, Calm, or even there's so many ways you can just like Google and find like a 5-minute meditation that walks you through on like YouTube. A lot of people find it helpful to journal or massage. So these are just some ways. I think, again, most of us, it's a sampler. I take a little of this, I take a little of that, and that's how I manage the stress in my life. So these get a little bit to those environmental stresses. So we're going to deep dive a little bit more. So what is it in plastics? It's these BPAs. When you read a plastic bottle that says no BPA, the challenge is they took a BPA alternative that we really haven't studied, and the FDA isn't telling you is healthy. So the assumption is, but we don't know that. And the concern for many is it's no better. So just avoid eating and drinking out of plastic. The other thing that we can control is what we use to clean our homes or for our beauty products. This is a place I will say you can take like a deep dive and it can make you a bit nutty. So we want to be reasonable, right? So there's always so much we can control. Simple things, trying to avoid parabens and phthalates. When you clean your home, try to use gloves. So that notion that skin is the largest organ in our body, so it'll absorb incredibly readily, making sure that there's a barrier to what you're cleaning. Really strong smelling substances should not touch your skin. Pesticide residue, so organic based, and really cleaning our fruits and vegetables before we eat them. And then being mindful of the heavy metals that we ingest. So the mercury-laden fishes and some of the other things in our environment. And of course, the majority of this is limited by, is regulated. So we can only do what we can do, but these small things, avoiding parabens and phthalates, wearing gloves when you clean, organic based, cleaning your fruits and vegetables, avoiding the plastics, taking your shoes off when you enter your house so that you don't track things in, closing the windows in a high pollutant area when you're driving, small things that can make a difference if feasible to get an air filter for your home. So just a couple of ideas. Oh, gosh. I accidentally stopped sharing the screen. Sorry for that. I just get so excited. Yes, I get too excited about environmental toxins. So now we get into some of the fertility myths. So infertility is just a female problem. We know that that's not the case. There are statistics that it is both, probably 1 in 4. It's only men, about 1 in 3. So we know that's not the case. I'm healthy, so age doesn't matter. I so wish this was true. I mean, I think in so many ways in our world, 40 is the new 50, and et cetera, and 50 is the new 60, and the way that we're living, people are living their lives, maybe how they look, the longevity in which people live. But it doesn't apply to the ovary. The ovary really is stuck. And evolutionarily, there's nothing to push it to allow reproduction to extend. And so our peak fertility remains in our middle to late 20s, and it diminishes most dramatically mid-30s. Fertility treatment is not affordable. We are in Illinois, so many, if not the majority of those in Illinois have coverage. So that's not necessarily true either. The only fertility treatment is IVF. Absolutely not. There'll be other things. I'm the only one having trouble. I think so many people feel this way, which is why Sometimes the support groups or the social media is helpful just to get that perspective. There's definitely others. 1 in 6 is not rare. Fertility treatment always means multiples. Candidly, this is a valid criticism, but that is fertility treatment of the 90s. That is not fertility treatments of 2023. We absolutely, our goal is one healthy child at a time. If you just relax, you get pregnant. I hate that. That is absolutely not true. And by the way, when someone tells you to relax, whoever really relaxes, but that is not helpful, and it's not true. So, who might come see a fertility specialist? We just sort of talked about this. So, heterosexual couples, same-sex couples, same-sex individuals, single individuals, transgender individuals or couples, those seeking fertility preservation, which is about like egg or sperm freezing. Those elective means that we're doing it really more related to age. Cancer is an individual who's going to receive treatment that we know is going to negatively impact their egg function. And that's why there's this impetus to freeze eggs in a very fast way. Or someone who's interested potentially in being an egg donor or using the services of an egg donor. So definitions of infertility is helpful. So the inability to conceive in a relationship in relation to in a female partner, so in a female-male relationship, when the female is less than 35 and has regular cycles and pregnancy has not been achieved after a year. If that number, if you're between 35 and 39, that's 6 months. Greater than 40, it's about 3 months. And I think what's always really helpful is it's not a year or 6 months of using my ovulation kit and having my app and doing 7 things to know for sure it was the peak moment of the peak day. It is simply not protecting. And so population after population has been studied, and they try to identify what is the drop-off points of where conceiving has occurred in the vast majority and not occurred in a minority. And that's like a bell curve in school is how we made these definitions. But it's the absence of contracepting. It's not proactively doing sort of like 6 things. What does trying to conceive really mean? So unprotected intercourse is actively trying. So how likely you are to conceive is really based on the age of the egg. For better or worse, the likelihood of conceiving within 12 months when you're 20 to 24 is about 86% after a year. So then again, greater than a year, you fall into that bell curve in that extreme. 25 to 29, about 78%. 30 to 34, 63%. 35 to 39, 50%. This is another visual of seeing the diminishment in egg quality and how that impacts the ability to conceive. So age matters when it comes to fertility. So when I was in training, we would sort of refer to these as like the dreaded graph. So the purple is this idea that the likelihood of conceiving per month diminishes. Again, this concept, and we see, it's the steepest in our mid-30s. The way that we kind of also know this reflects egg quality is miscarriage risk starts to really increase. And that's the idea that when pregnancy occurs in those that are older, the egg source is older, the likelihood of chromosome or genetic abnormalities in a pregnancy is greater. The most likely outcome of that is miscarriage. So this is sort of another way of kind of saying quality diminishes with time. And I wish that we had a tool to give someone so that we can stop this, prevent this, or change this. So causes of infertility. This again shows, so male factor, female factor exclusively, a combined, unexplained. In the female factor category, it can be issues of ovulating, issues of ovarian reserve, issues of endometriosis, issues of blocked tubes. And so when you come, some of the testing we do is to decipher what that is, so we can do a treatment that makes the most sense. So this is the idea that we seek help early for the greater chance of pregnancy. So when you're initially trying to conceive, a woman in her early 30s has about a 15 to 20% chance per month. So we talked about per year, now we're at 2 per month. And the idea when you're trying to conceive, the vast majority do, particularly the younger you are, within about that 6 months, extending to about a year. The likelihood of conceiving as time goes on becomes less and less. So the chance of success declines quickly when you're kind of trying on your own. And this, again, is kind of defining the infertility group, right? So that if the fertile, quote unquote, occurs within, depending on your age, 6 months to a year, when we get outside that range, it's going to be less. So this is where there's an advantage to see someone so you can figure out what is the why that I'm having trouble and what can you do to help me. Warning signs that a specialist could be helpful sooner. So we're making assumptions, right? So if someone is trying, but they get periods once a year, obviously I would not wait for 6 months or a year. You want to do this right away. Someone is concerned they have PCOS, so they have endometriosis. You know your partner had a vasectomy. Well, then obviously we're going to need assistance. The tubal ligation was performed. There's suspicion that there's issues of the sperm. A couple has experienced greater than 2 miscarriages. You've already done some ovarian reserve testing. AMH is an ovarian reserve marker, and less than 1 would be a low marker. So this is kind of that sign. I don't necessarily, in fairness, you don't necessarily ever need to wait, but particularly those, we don't want you just to watch a clock, especially when you're not getting a period. So right away, that's something that we know will seek assistance. So why do I need to see somebody? What we've talked about ad nauseum about the age and the ovaries is that, the sooner you see someone, the sooner they can help you. The younger you are, the more effective it can be. If you're thinking of trying to create opportunities for your goal family size, all of that is most feasible the earlier sort of intervention comes in. The frustration of I'm doing everything right. I'm eating everything you just listed. I never touch any toxin. I'm doing everything anyone's ever told me. I live the cleanest, healthiest life, and it's not working. Well, it's time to do some testing. So we just, there's nothing more frustrating than, trying without clear reason. You may have, require some treatments that your OB-GYN can't offer. So as we get into more specialized diagnosis, treatment will be used that an OB-GYN wouldn't perform. And I think that the other piece is fertility practice focus on infertility and improving success every day. So why see a specialist? This is probably true for many aspects of medicine. When all you do all day, every day is one thing, the way that you do it is potentially, those of us who do infertility have had 3 extra years of training at a minimum. So there's that piece of it. There's also the piece is all you do every day. So something that might seem more rare to someone that's more broad is your every single day, and that's what you kind of want. The system is also in place. So the testing that's required on particular days isn't a struggle. The whole entity of our organization is to make this easy. Do I need a referral to see a specialist? And what is a referral? So a referral is the act of one physician sending a patient to another physician for medical care. An actual referral slip that authorizes you to see a specialist. When is a referral needed? It's really insurance-based. So sometimes an HMO or Aetna would require that. Can I see a specialist without a referral from my OB-GYN or primary care? Yes, absolutely. At least half of our patients, that's the way. So unless there's a sort of a very particular with your insurance, and if you have questions, please contact them. If referrals need to see a fertility physician, if you're at that place, you don't need, you can simply call our office, and we are thrilled to help get to the bottom of what could be going on. What happens at the first appointment? This is just a piece. I know I showed the map, but people live very busy lives, and potentially some of you listening live in areas not necessarily as close to some of those centers. So virtual appointments are available in the very beginning. A version of a Zoom is done. If you'd like to come into the office, wonderful as well. The goal of the initial consultation is to give you really all the information you need to create a sense of your next steps in terms of the testing and some initial introduction of what treatments could be. So you will meet with a physician. You'll have an in-depth review and preliminary recommendations. Your initial visit at Fertility Center of Illinois is with a infertility subspecialist. It is not with a generalist. It is not with a nurse practitioner. Then you meet with your medical team to kind of work out the details of the next step. So particularly if you're in the office after you meet with the physician, you would meet with the nurse who works closely with that particular physician about how to connect with us, do some of that testing. And then there's the option to review your insurance benefits, depending on if it's in person or it can be also a virtual call. So meeting with this. So we can do in person or virtual. I think it's the advantage of in person, we're doing this virtually, is there's obviously, you can read cues. There's maybe a bit more of a connection. If you have a lot of questions, sometimes it's easier. If there's a desire to physically meet with people. If it's really challenging to leave work and park, then this is a way for it to be, virtual allows everything to happen much easier and much faster. So I think it's up to you. And if once someone decides, you could flip. Your first visit is in person, your second visit is virtual. Discuss your medical history, review the testing that you've done, testing that we'd want to do, really try to individualize your plan. If testing has been recently completed, potentially a diagnosis can be made. This is sort of the advice I give every single one of my family members. When you are seeing a physician and you've done testing, I would physically bring it to each and every office. Physician offices are notoriously challenged by communication. Everything is HIPAA compliant. Fax is incredibly slow. So that is my 2 cents. If testing hasn't been completed or not all of it, then that's our goal, is to outline for you what initially needs to be done for me to understand what could be contributing to the difficulty for us conceiving. So then here are some ways that we test infertility. So we are going to ask if you're ovulating. And what's interesting with ovulation is even history can be as indicative as blood testing. So it depends. So you have a cycle that's very irregular, then early cycles. So typically days 2, 3, 4, 5 of the cycle, we do our first set of blood work and ultrasound to look at things like health and age of the ovary. If history tells me that there's a suggestion you're not ovulating, I'm going to add in certain hormones at that visit to try to get to the why. We look at the ultrasound to see if there's issues that could be impacting conceiving, like fibroids. We do what's called a saline sonogram or an HSG, which is a functional ultrasound where a fluid is placed in the cavity to open that space. So we can be confident, I see a fibroid, nope, but it's not in that inner cavity where the pregnancy would be. We're able to assure the tubes are open. Semen analysis helps to assure that the sperm count is normal. That the movement is normal and the quality is good. Things also that we look at with testing and history is endometriosis. Obviously, we assess someone's age. Ovarian failure is a very rare diagnosis where someone has very early menopause. Pregnancy loss, or those who have conceived readily but now are struggling in a subsequent pregnancy. All of those, there's sort of different type of testing, but in general, for the egg source, so to speak, there's blood work that is done days 2 through 6, 7 of the cycle that looks wholeheartedly at health and age of the ovary, particular components based on history of ovulating, a deep dive into preconception. So the ultimate in preconception is now. So if we're going to help to conceive, are there any tools we can do to make that pregnancy healthier? That comes into things like your thyroid and your vitamin D. We screen infectious diseases. We look at viral titers, a subset of viruses that can impact the health of a pregnancy. COVID has taught all of us, even if you're vaccinated when you're young, immunity can wean. And so we want to make sure if that's had, you know it, and you can get revaccinated prior to pregnancy. And so there's kind of a broader, even context of testing to think about. And that second test is where we place fluid inside the cavity, triple check that uterus is normal in shape and the tubes are open. That's where the passageway for egg and sperm to meet. And separately, a semen analysis obtained. That can be done inside our office. That can be done at home and brought to the office, whatever feels most comfortable. So what impacts your likelihood of conceiving? So your diagnosis will have a play, of course. So the reasons why someone can conceive, some of our treatment is more or less effective in that way. Your age that we talked about. None of us can do anything to make ourselves younger, as we all know, but we can theoretically change some of these other factors. So weight, which is a struggle. It's not that this is an easy change to make. Same with tobacco, same with cannabis. But the toxins in our world, like tobacco and cannabis, minimizing those toxins will improve your fertility. For instance, for those trying to conceive, for the individual, for a woman that smokes, her likelihood of conceiving with infertility treatment is cut by half. And menopause occurs earlier, cut by half. I mean, that's pretty dramatic. Stopping smoking can make that's a difference. For women, we are born with a fixed number of eggs, so stopping some of these toxins minimizes further injury. What's kind of amazing about sperm is every 3 months it regenerates. So if you were someone who was a smoker and then you stopped, from the perspective of sperm, 3 months down the line, it's as if you never smoked. I mean, there's almost like nothing in our body that's that way. So it really reinforces there's something really spectacular about making lifestyle change the perspective of sperm. And again, none of us can change our age, but with effort and diet, and in some cases, your primary care physician medication, we can potentially optimize our weight. And that can improve the likelihood of pregnancy and the health of the pregnancy. So stepped care approach, well, you have to do IVF. Approximately 50% of all treatment is what I guess basic or low tech would be the term. We really want to take a stepped care approach to treatment. So we start with the most basic treatment first, when feasible, and when likely to achieve success, and when that's your desire. I mean, I think what's really important is that you learn all that exists, and then we help kind of decide this together. Regardless of your diagnosis, if certain treatments in your own mind are like a no-go, then talking about them is somewhat, waste of your time. If certain treatments do feel wasteful, then we don't want to spend time on something that you view in that perspective. So your desire and your input is key. So as a result, many patients begin with basic treatment, achieve a pregnancy, and never necessarily need IVF. But for those that do, it's helpful that it's there. For those of us that do IVF, or those that do IVF and it's not successful or based on certain age, in some cases, an egg donor is needed. And so there is a huge continuum. And that's the kind of the value of this slide, is to appreciate that. Does fertility treatment work? There definitely are now treatments available to help nearly everyone conceive. And this is, if we think about this continuum, if someone is in the mindset of saying, I know that I came to conceive and now I'm doing a treatment, maybe not necessarily what I had envisioned, our likelihood of helping you to conceive is extraordinarily high. What treatment will you need? That your doctor, when you see with, can help you determine. But if someone is able or willing, or it's amenable to try various treatments, our ability to help you is extraordinarily high. So really is our commitment to provide realistic expectations, so that when you're deciding these treatments, nobody wants to sell you on anything. We want to make sure that you're aware of how well it would work, and then you decide. Oh, wow. So gosh. So next, Janet's going to take over. So please, thank you so much, Janet, for coming here and discussing a little bit the financial piece.
It's my pleasure. Hello, everybody, and thank you for showing up today. Janet Rosales, Patient Account Supervisor here, and we're going to talk about how we're here to help you. Our goal is to provide caring expertise on every step of your journey. Our financial coordinators will help and assist you to maximize your insurance coverage and figure out the best financial solutions for you so that you can focus on growing your family. They are also there to answer your questions. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our financial coordinators will walk you through what plan covers based on what treatment is needed and which will be discussed during your consultation. I apologize. Illinois is a mandated state, meaning that the state requires employers to provide infertility coverage. There are certain exceptions to this rule. Employer groups with fewer than 25 employees, individual policies, insurance policies written outside of Illinois, meaning not all employees in Illinois have Illinois-based insurance policies, so you want to check with your insurance to see what kind of coverage you have. We encourage you to talk to your insurance to understand what your plan is and verify your benefits. Another important note is that many plans require prior authorization before any services may be started. And obtaining a prior authorization can take up to 15 days. So it's very important to keep in mind before you get started treatment is to make sure that you have that prior auth if you need it. Next slide. Thank you. Can I afford treatment? Well, we will help you navigate the cost of treatment. 90% of patients have coverage for the initial consultation. Most have some level of coverage for treatment. And to pay for treatment, there's a couple of different options. Insurance, financial programs like ours, 100% shared risk program for IVF patients, lending options, or grants. And you have options and our financial coordinators will help you figure out what works best for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. And Dr. Hirschfeld, do you mind pulling up the slide with the events one more time? Sorry.
Oh, I think it's still up.
Oh, is it up? Okay. Oh, it is up. For some reason, it's not showing up on my screen. Just wanted to let you know we have a lot more events for National Infertility Awareness Week coming up. We actually yesterday released a podcast with one of our patients who also lobbied for a couple of laws in Illinois and helped pass 2 laws in Illinois related to infertility. So I highly recommend you listen to it. She has a very beautiful, emotional infertility story, and she's done some really amazing things for the infertility community in Illinois. We also have another podcast tomorrow with Dr. Edwards, who Dr. Hirschfeld highlighted earlier, one of our mental health professionals. She will talk about coping with infertility and dive a little bit deeper into some of those coping mechanisms that Dr. Hirschfeld talked about today, like mindfulness, and ways to build your support system, ways to really open up to others when it's maybe not the most comfortable time, because a lot of our patients we know feel very alone, and we want you to have a full rally of support. And of course, we're always here for you to rally for you as well. As your care team, as FCI, we want to help you. Your miracle is our mission. And we will be sharing patient stories. So some of the patient success stories that we have on Friday. So if you check out our social media, our Instagram, our Facebook, we'll be sharing those all day long. And so we have some really, beautiful stories about how FCI helped some families, create their little miracles. And we look forward to sharing those. We also have support groups like we had discussed earlier, like Dr. Hirschfeld had discussed. And these are some of our upcoming support groups. We have the monthly infertility support group coming up May 13th. No partner needed for anyone who is a single parent or is trying to conceive as a single parent. And in June, we have Together We Begin Again, the pregnancy loss support group. If you've experienced a miscarriage or pregnancy loss at any point. So we highly recommend that you check those out. And without further ado, I think we're getting to the Q&A, right?
Yeah, we're at the Q&A. So
right.
Your future starts the conversation. Please ask us your questions. I'm going to stop sharing so that it's easy for me to see questions.
All right. Dr. Hirschfeld, let's see. Let's see what questions we have for you. Would you recommend any detox or cleanses prior to egg freezing, considering a cleanse to remove toxins a month prior to potential egg freezing?
Candidly, no. Toxins are kind of, like detox is like a marketing piece. It's not real, right? Our kidneys and our liver, that's your detox. Not something that you ingest from a bottle. So that really is more like a marketing piece than reality. When you start your egg freezing treatment, I would avoid like some of the laundry list of supplements in the context that some of the medicines that you take, even as they're vitamins, might interact with the medications you're being prescribed. And I would review with your physician. But a quote unquote detox it doesn't really do anything. It just kind of sells people's products.
Thank you, Dr. Hirschfeld. Who performs IVF extraction and transfer procedures? Is it the physicians?
Yes, it is the physicians who do our retrievals and our transfers, and we are a group entirely composed of reproductive endocrinologists, which means that we've gone through a board certified fellowship, each and every one of us.
And how can you improve egg quality?
So some of the things that we kind of highlighted. So again, the most important factor for egg quality is going to be for better or worse, our age. And none of us can be younger, but we can check a little bit and change what we put into our body. So that healthy nutrition piece that I talked about, the being of healthy weight is critical, avoiding tobacco, avoiding cannabis. The single most important thing would be to be of healthy weight.
Thoughts about wearing a mask to avoid COVID while trying to get pregnant. Is it or is it not necessary?
No, I think we all know COVID hasn't gone away. I mean, I think its impact to our society is dramatically different, and that's clear. It is still not optimal to get COVID when you're pregnant. It is really important to be vaccinated. So to be vaccinated to COVID, to be vaccinated to the flu, especially when you're pregnant, I would view COVID now like the flu. So if you're in a high dense area and you're concerned, a mask is an easy thing to wear, but vaccination is key too.
Can you get a massage during the 2-week wait?
Yes, please.
Can you do egg preservation with an IUD?
Yes. Thank you for asking that. So the way that we do a retrieval, I don't have like a great picture, but I might just draw. There's an ultrasound probe that goes vaginally to aspirate the egg. So through the vaginal wall, if you envision this as like the uterus, and these are always the pictures of the tube, and the ovary is always like pictured here. This is the cervix, this is the uterus. Your IUD is here. This is the vagina. The needle goes through the vaginal wall to aspirate that ovary. We do not go through the uterus, through the tube. So your IUD can stay in place. We have and other people have studied. It does not impact your success in any negative way. It's a wonderful form of contraception, but it's not fun to place. So we definitely don't want to remove it unnecessarily.
What are the recommendations for women with thyroid disease who are trying to conceive?
So depending on the type of thyroid disease, either low thyroid or subclinical hypothyroidism, a lot of times we help to manage. Hyper, often you're already seeing a medical endocrinologist. It is optimal that thyroid disease is optimally being managed, meaning that your functionality is good before pregnancy occurs. But depending on that's something that is not a challenging ask. I mean, it can take a little bit of time, but there absolutely are medications to help thyroid disease to be well managed so that pregnancy can occur. Those on thyroid medications often will continue throughout pregnancy.
Unless someone is overweight or has a higher BMI, is having a calorie deficit to try to lose weight not advised?
I would not advocate to lose weight for someone who's of normal or low BMI, if that's the question.
I think it's if you're trying, if you're trying to lose weight, maybe you're a normal BMI, but you want to lose a couple pounds for summer, whatever it might be. Okay. So
yeah. And I'm gonna be annoyed and say that thing again, but everything in moderation, even moderation. So yeah, if someone wants to lose 1 or 2 pounds at summer, I get it. We all feel a certain way. We want to look a certain way, and what's on the scale in our mind might be different than what people see or you see. For when you are trying to conceive, it really isn't advised to lose weight when you're abnormal or under a low BMI. Right? We want, this is a time that we want to be nutritionally repleted. And so the idea, even for, regardless of someone's BMI, is when you're trying to conceive, we want really nutrient dense foods. They don't have to be calorically dense, but nutrient dense, right? Really healthy fats, like an avocado or salmon, fruits and vegetables, things that can have high, avocado is not low calorie, can have the same calories as a cookie, but a cookie doesn't give you anything nutritionally. So you really want to put your money where your mouth is in terms of how you ingest your food so that it's really giving you as much bang for your buck. Losing a couple of pounds, I think that's okay, but I wouldn't make a concerted effort when you're trying to conceive. If you're doing egg freezing, probably doesn't matter.
What does treatment look like for someone diagnosed with PCOS?
So often we play a role in making that PCOS diagnosis. So I always think of PCOS as a diagnosis of exclusion. So we have to rule out a bunch of lookalikes. So that's some of the hormone testing we do. So sometimes your adrenal gland can look like PCOS, or your thyroid, something called your prolactin. An ovarian tumor is extraordinarily rare. So our job is to say, yep, this 100% is PCOS. To appreciate those with PCOS, we're going to be focused on fertility and focused on your ovarian function, but it's a broader piece that you want to be aware of. Those with PCOS, it can impact risk of heart disease, diabetes, sleep dysfunction. So often we talk about how we screen for those things. When our focus is fertility, it depends on the whole picture, right? So what we want to make sure of is that, yep, we know this is likely PCOS, your cycles are irregular. I don't want to assume the sperm is normal and your tubes are open. We're going to do all that testing before we start treatment. Because shame on us that there was more than one thing that we missed. So the first piece is still going to be meeting with someone, an assessment of what this truly is, that it's nothing in addition, and then about treatment, depending on what else is occurring. But at a minimum will be medicines to help you ovulate.
After several IVF cycles, when do you start consulting someone on alternative treatments like egg donation?
So I think egg donation is a conversation to have. For most of us, it's something you want to talk about on multiple occasions because it's really changing someone's perspective. And I get that. This is not some easy piece for many. But we also want to make sure we're not doing treatment that feels futile or is futile. Right. So after X number of IVF cycles, to me, things that are really concerning is couples or patients that we're not getting to the retrieval. Right? They're taking the medicines, but we're canceling before the retrieval because they're just not the development. We're getting the retrieval, but we're not getting, nothing is being fertilized. Or it's fertilized, but it's not creating embryos. Right? Like to do an IVF cycle, you want to make sure we go all the way to the end for repeat cycles to have value. If we're not making it there, then what I really want to be mindful that we avoid is just giving you medications without any deemed benefit. So that's kind of my guideline. I think if it's something that you want to learn more about, whatever physician you are seeing, I guarantee that is something that they'd be happy to discuss with you.
For anyone who's interested, some of our patient stories that we will be sharing on Friday are actually individuals and couples who have done egg donation as an option when IVF was not successful.
Yeah, and I would say, like, I have patients who've had multiple children. We've had as my patient, and not one was with egg donor, one was not. So I think that's important too. Different children can be created in different ways. One thing that really I love about working at Fertility Centers of Illinois is we have a completely dedicated, what we call third-party team. So we have a team of really outstanding nurses that their entire focus is helping you to identify an egg donor and helping you to walk through that process. There's a lot of financial questions that come up. We have a dedicated financial person to that team. So this is something that we know takes a lot of thought and consideration, and that's why we really put our efforts and resources there.
A peer referenced Clomid, is that an oral medication that you would take before trying IUI?
You said a peered reference, you said?
Oh, yeah. So someone was saying that one of their peers had referenced Clomid that you would take before trying IUI.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Not necessarily, right? So sometimes we use Clomid with IUI, and it depends why. So if your periods are stone cold regular, Clomid was designed to help you to regulate a cycle. If it's already regular, giving you Clomid is minimally effective. So again, we start with the why. Why is it that you're having challenges conceiving before I would jump to treatment?
Here's a question about diet. If you don't like the foods that you mentioned earlier, like avocados and fish, do you have other recommendations?
No, I hear you there. So, I think we all know in our own world what it is that we're trying to eat predominantly. So many colorful fruits and vegetables. I would implore people to go and find it as what they love. Doesn't have to be avocado. Other sources of healthy fats is like whole fat dairy is a wonderful source of protein and healthy fat. Some people really are vegetarian. You do not have to have meat as a protein source. You can have beans, you can have tofu. I think if there is a fair amount online here, I actually, I hesitate to reference people online. I think in the diet piece, it's helpful. And so how to really get nutrient dense foods, there's a fair amount online. We do have some dietitians we work with if someone really wants a personal guidance. But things that I think about is first and foremost is fruits and vegetables. It doesn't have to be this, and to eat a variety. to really try to seek out colorful red peppers, right? Like everything. You want to eat the color of the rainbow. That would be the one thing that I would take home. And then lean meats, right? So whether that's poultry or that's pork or that's that's goat or like a buffalo, a bison burger or an impossible burger, or it is fish or it's tofu. There's so many different ways to eat that healthily to try to minimize eating food that's fried. Thing that's really important is a lot of times calories can come in a nutrient poor way, like things that we drink, like a Starbucks beverage that has or Duncan Hines, like has whipped cream as a sauce and has this and has that. And it's like a huge caloric intake and all you got was sugar. So minimizing sugar, minimizing simple sugars and white flours, eating nutrient dense foods, colorful fruits and vegetables. I think that's a great place to start.
Are there vitamins that people can take as well to help build those nutrients that they need when trying to conceive?
There are. I mean, I think I said my hesitation of vitamins again is a couple. One, it's not regulated in the US. So in truth, when you take a vitamin, we know one thing that's on the bottle. Nobody really ever knows what's the filler. So these like fertility vitamins, a proprietary blend, God knows what you're ingesting. So I'm very hesitant to advocate those because I don't know what's in it. And just because it's a vitamin doesn't mean it won't interact with other medications. We talked about detox. There's systems in your body to detoxify anything you ingest, including a vitamin. And if we get distracted, the medicines we're giving you maybe for fertility aren't being metabolized as effectively. That's my hesitation with a bunch of vitamins. Plus, your gut doesn't really take them in. So unless you get blood flow to your gut, you're just taking stuff. It's not necessarily getting into the bloodstream. So yes, for sure, you should take a prenatal vitamin with at least 400, 800 micrograms of folic acid. And most of us need vitamin D. Fish oil of 1,000 milligrams can be helpful. But I would really encourage people to try to ingest the majority of the other type of supplements. A prenatal is not something you can get in food. Folic acid, we want it fortified. So I want to specify everyone should be on a prenatal.
That is great advice. I'm going to dive into another question. If both my partner and I have done initial testing, or if both partners have done initial testing to keep it broad, and there seems to be an issue with male factor fertility, infertility, should I consider egg freezing while he is trying to up his sperm counts?
Potentially. I think that if it depends on the cause of the sperm. So if the desire is still to conceive in a more readily fashion, and IVF might be needed for the lower sperm counts, I'm not sure I would create eggs. I think I'd go right away to IVF for your fertility treatment. We're dipping our toe in with egg freezing. We might as well just go for it. So if there's a desire to, if there's treatment for male factor, it can take a series of months to see that benefit because it takes 3 months for sperm to regenerate. But IVF can often be a solution for lower sperm counts where we don't have to wait. And so if there's a piece of a couple that's like, God, we're waiting a long time and we're seeing this urologist, he said it could still be longer. Some do IVF for that purpose to say, we know with our, maybe with time, some of these things we're doing is going to have benefit, but we're just ready to be pregnant. And I think that also gets to that conversation about talking about options and talking about your desire, which might include timeline.
Someone had a question if you could repeat the information about our psychologists, and also is it normal or is it common for people to see them before starting IVF?
I think it's wonderful to see them before you start IVF. Common, I don't know. They would have to say. I don't know how people sort of find them, but I think it's wonderful. Many people, when I talk about seeing one of our psychologists, will say, well, I have a therapist that I see I've seen for a long time that is really helpful for me. And I would just say that what is unique about these two individuals, this is all they do, right? All day is helping individuals with infertility or loss. And so it is, I'm not sure it's instead of, if you're seeing a therapist, it just might be a more focused conversation. So these are the two people. I'm not sure if that was the slide.
Yep.
On fcnonline.com are all of our support groups. And I'm just going to flip really fast to that slide that showed the upcoming groups. That's right here.
And one more question that we have time for. How does endometriosis impact fertility? And is it the scarring that interferes with implantation?
So endometriosis can impact infertility sort of at a series of places. It can impact infertility by scarring that can block the tubes and then egg and sperm can't meet. It can impact infertility by impacting egg quality. It can impact infertility by impacting implantation. So it depends on the severity of someone's endometriosis and the other factors, but it can sort of hit at multiple points along the process.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Dr. Hirshfeld. So that is all the time we have for questions, but thank you for everyone who submitted, and we will, continue to look at your questions, and we always keep them in mind for future webinars, and try to answer them as best we can after the webinar as well. And we also encourage you to check out our content. And again, look at our blogs, look at our social media. We're always answering some of these really common questions regarding, endometriosis, PCOS, all different areas of fertility.
Yeah, and I'd schedule an appointment. If you're seeking care and you don't feel like your questions are being answered, schedule a second opinion.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. If you have more questions, schedule with one of our wonderful physicians. Dr. Hirshfeld, do you mind pulling up our prizes?
Right here.
Okay, great. Sorry, I think that my stream is just a second behind. So for our prizes today, our first prize is a free year of cryo storage for a new patient. So cryo storage stores your eggs and freezes them for later use. If you're an individual or couple ready to start a family, the frozen eggs are kept in our 30 plus cryo storage tanks. We currently store over 30,000 frozen embryos, eggs, and sperm samples. And that first prize of cryo storage is going to Nikisha. And so I will be emailing you after the webinar, so just keep an eye out for that. And our second prize is a fertility awareness check for new patients. The fertility awareness check includes the most predictive fertility testing to determine an individual or a couple's potential for getting pregnant. And it can test eggs, sperm, or both with a blood test, ultrasound, and semen analysis. And it goes for $99, but retails for over $1,000. So if you're interested in learning more about your fertility potential, this is a great test to get. It's really easily accessible. You can do it at any of our clinics, and that goes to DeMonte. And then our third prize is our tickets to our Chicago Red Stars home game. Fertility Centers of Illinois is the official fertility partner of the Chicago Red Stars. They are the women's soccer team in Chicago, and you will get several tickets to a home game plus parking passes to the date of your choosing, and that's going to go to Michelle. And again, all of our winners, I will be in touch with you via email to get you your prizes. And with that, I want to thank Dr. Hirshfeld. I want to thank Janet for joining us today. And thank you all for joining us as well. We hope that you really enjoyed this webinar.
Have a great evening.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.